Hi there, this is Danny with End Time Country Living, and on this video I just want to kind of show you a little bit about what I'm doing out here in the garden and show you a new toy I got. So I'm very happy that my garlic, both the music garlic and the elephant garlic here are doing well. The elephant garlic, it looks kind of puny compared to the music garlic, but it's still doing pretty good here. So this here is the elephant garlic that I was able to propagate out. So I got some, like last year I grew some out and was able to get enough cloves to plant a fairly good amount here. So there's about 25 feet or so of bed space that I was able to fill in here. Not quite that, maybe about 20 feet. So that gives me about 40 plants because they're spaced 1 foot apart here. So that seems to be the standard, and they seem to be doing fairly well here. Got them fairly well weeded so far. That's one of the things you want to make sure when you're doing garlic is to keep them well weeded. And so I've kept my other garlic well weeded there, and it's doing very well. So for size comparison, you can see here on the right here is the elephant garlic. And up here is the music garlic. So it's at least a foot higher than the elephant garlic. It's doing very well this year. Now, one thing I'm trying this year is to spray a mineral supplement as a foliar spray and seeing if I can keep the rust fungus off there. So it's at about waist high right now. So these are a 6-inch spacing in a grid. 5, let's see, did I do 5 rows? No, they're 4 rows this year in a 30-inch bed. You can see the stalks are nice and thick here, doing well. And usually when I have, I'm just noticing here, the first row here is that there's a double one there, so I'll need to yank that out so that the one that's left will be able to get much bigger. Also got my lettuce in here. It's coming along. It's being a little bit slow, but it's not terribly bad here. Got a little bit in a shaded area here, so you'll notice down there at the other end of the bed it's got more sun, so that's on purpose there because they don't do well with a lot of too much sun. And then I got my spinach in the bed next to that, also in a little shaded area here. And some more lettuce at the end of that row because I ran out of spinach for the little allotted area I had, which is about, I don't know, 8 feet or so. I think it was about 8 feet that I put in there. There's quite a few different varieties here. So they all taste fairly good. Some different red ones and different colors, mixtures of green and so then on down the bed there I have my cabbage. The first here is the cabbage. I think it's, yeah, cabbage for most of it down there, and then another third of the bed. And then the other end down there is my Swiss chard. And over on the adjacent bed here to the right is, what is that? That's collards. Down there, the single row there. And then kohlrabi here with the 3 rows. And then we got the potatoes here. They're coming up nicely. So trying some different planting techniques again here. It wasn't quite very successful on planting them deep down, about 8 to 10 inches down in the soil in a pit. So I think they need more nutrition, and a lot of people were saying that the roots need a lot more air, and so having more of a hill that they grow in, they do a lot better. So I'm giving that a try this year. So I didn't plant them very deep here, just maybe 3 inches down. And so I'll be hilling them up as they get a little taller here. They're just about ready to be maybe a first tilling here, just to Get them a little bit of more soil around them. So we've got the bed of onions here, nicely planted. Approximately 500 in there in the 50-foot bed. And the soil temperature just isn't warming up very quickly this year. Still about 60 degrees here. So not sure why that is, but we're just kind of holding off here. The nights are still down in the low 40s, sometimes 37, 39 or so is a low here. So anyway. And then was it last night I was able to get the beets in their bed, got the bed made. Got it, so I tilled it up here and forked it and got all the rocks out of there. It's still had some rocks down fairly deep, so I was able to extract all those. And what else did I do? Yeah, smoothed it out and then added a thin layer of compost over the surface. That's why it looks a little darker there. And then down the other end is the kale. And then down the other far end there's still some bed space left over for some fennel and basil. That still needs to go in whenever the risk of frost is over, the nights get a little warmer here. But I think they could go out now. I don't think we're going to get any more frost, but just trying to be cautious here because frost still could hit us. So then over on the bed to the right of the kale and the beets here is going to be another potato bed. Found a lot of potatoes coming up and was digging around and was able to extract a whole bunch more that had been left in the soil from last year that I missed. So that means I have more seed potatoes. I don't know if I have enough to do a complete bed, but I'm going to prepare it as such, and we'll see what we can scrounge up here to find some more potatoes to grow here, but I don't have another plan for this bed anyway, so if whatever is left over, I'll probably plant dry beans on the other end there. So that'll be, use up the space with dry beans, since you can always, those are easy to plant and unlimited seed on those pretty much. And then got a bunch of other stuff that still needs to go in, the warmer cucumbers and the squash and some of the other warmer stuff. I'm not going to plant the tomatoes or peppers in here, and they're going to go out by the front gate this year. That's the plan. And then so I got another bed over here for sweet potatoes, and then the one next to it I'm also preparing for sweet potatoes. So I'm mixing in used potting mix, which has a lot of peat moss in there. It's the main reason I'm putting that in there, is to lighten up the soil and give it more organic matter. And mix in some compost. It's well screened. And what else here? Oh, and pumice. So mixing the pumice there. Anyway, so this is my new tool here. I was able to get on just a few days ago. And so this is a BCS 720. And so this is a used one. It has a 8 horsepower engine on there, and it does have an electric start on there, but it doesn't work right now. It needs a new battery, and maybe some of the electrical wiring needs to be redone on it, but it's mainly just a pull start. Works fine on there, so it starts fairly well and runs fairly well on there. And so anyway, got the tiller attachment. I think it's like an 18-inch one, the smallest one there, which is totally sufficient. If I was going to like a 20 or 24, I still wouldn't be able to cover the 30-inch bed. So I'm going to have to make 2 passes anyway, up and down the bed anyway. So the 18 is perfectly fine. Don't need it any wider. Otherwise, I'm just retilling the center portion twice. Anyway, works fairly well. It's able to go down, take about 6 inches or so, and it's a little lighter weight than some of the other BCSs out there. The 739 or the back up into the 6 or 800s. There's 800 series that's even bigger. but I was able to find this one available used, so very happy for that. Got a very good deal on it. And it has, what, 3 speeds, forward and backwards, and it's got the adjustable handle on here. Lift it up, but I can go for, bring it way down if needed, or usually when I'm tilling, I want it up fairly high because then it's going to go down. The whole base is going to go down, and so good working height for me. And it rotates back and forth as well. It's a little stiff right now, but it's also got the one of the engagements for the rototiller is kind of stuck here. It doesn't want to rotate like it needs to, so you have to be a little bit more careful on when it's attached to the handle here, how much rotation you do, so it doesn't get broken here. But there's a lot of little lubricating things up and polishing different bolts up to get it working smoothly here. So for making my sweet potato bed, the first thing I did was to go ahead and till it fairly deep, and then I'm going to, or what I did was to use a garden fork. This is about an 11-inch one, and so if I push down a little deeper, I can get almost to 12 inches. And so this is my broad fork for loosening up the soil. So I'll show you kind of how I use that. So because this has been a work in progress garden, didn't really have a good tiller to try to loosen up the soil till now. Still getting a lot of rocks out of the soil down. The first 6 inches or 5 inches or so are pretty much rock free, but down any deeper there's still some big ones. So anyway, that's where the garden fork comes in handy. And so once I get it tilled, I'm going to start at the edge of the bed here and go ahead and go all the way down and pull it back about 45 degrees, about like that, till the soil starts to lift a little bit. And I listen to see if there's any rocks down there. Wiggle it around if I hear a rock and down in there like there is right about there. Go back a little bit ways till I don't hear the rock anymore. Put it all the way down, and then I can use the fork here to kind of turn on its side, break it up, and try to find whatever rock is in there. Try again and see if there's really a rock down there, or if there's just a tiny one that's colliding. Usually tiny rocks, you can kind of hear them down there a little bit, but there isn't anything worth digging for. Anyway, just kind of going across the bed here about 3 times, across the bed. Lift and go back about 6 inches or so. Sometimes you go all the way down and you'll hit a rock, like right there's a rock down at the base, and that's 11 inches down. I'm not too worried about it for most crops, even the sweet potatoes, which this bed is not going to be sweet potatoes. I think it's going to be cucumbers, and they don't care. So anyway, that's kind of the process there. And then for the sweet potato bed, once I get all my amendments tilled in, there'll be quite a bit more soil here, but nonetheless, the next tool here that I got last year is really loving it here. This it's called the Weed 8. This is called an 8-inch Grape hoe. It's really solid, heavy metal, and got a good eye and a good handle that came with it here. It's nice and long, so it allows me to be in a standing position, and it's more for, well, it can be used for either hoeing big grass, which works really well, or big weeds. You can really get a chopping on them and get them out of there. So it's a blessing for areas that have, especially along the edge, where they have really gotten a lot of grass coming into the beds, things like that. So that's useful for that, but it's also good for moving soil, because it's unlike a rake, it doesn't have tines, so the soil doesn't go between them. So this is very useful for, so here's the edge of my bed here. This is the walkway. And so I can pull dirt into the beds here and hill them up. This is still pretty rough here, so it needs to be. Now it's still a bit wet here, so that's why it's going to be a little lumpy until it dries down a little bit more. And then I'll be able to till it again and kind of break it up a little bit too. So I've gone down majority of this and forked this already. So some of it's lumpy just because of stuff that's been brought up from down lower. But anyway, and then you can rake the surface here, but then you go on both sides here. So here's the other side of my bed here. So most of the time I'd be raking it to the middle here. So this could go a little bit more. It's an example here. But goes pretty quick here with this. Move it to the center here and then go on the other side and rake up the bed here. Okay, so there, right there, you could do this for potatoes or sweet potatoes, or excuse me, Irish potatoes or sweet potatoes. There's a black walnut right there. So then you do kind of smooth it out here, and then you can make a furrow. You can also use this for furrows because you can get your point there. Just drag down the center there. You got your furrow, so that's nice thing about this hoe, multiple purposes, so you don't have to go grabbing 3-4 different tools here. This one does a lot. So it's a rake, it's a hoe, it's a, what else does it? Furrow maker. I wouldn't take out rocks with it because it's try to keep the blade sharp on this. But other than that, and then the fork works really well for the digging down, removing rocks. You know, it's good for aeration, aerating the soil, but it also finds the rocks too. And as long as I don't put too much pry pressure on it, I'm able to get the rocks out without bending the tines or breaking the wood handle on it. So those two tools are pretty much what I'm using most of the time here. And then the good garden rake here is also useful for leveling out beds. Things like that. When I lay the compost out, for raking the compost around, that works good for that. So this is my finished sweet potato bed here, and so you always find all these little rocks popping up here, coming to the surface. So just have a 5-gallon bucket. Also, I wasn't intending it for that use, but I put a bunch of holes in here for a worm bin at one point, but it actually works really good because this is what I kind of put my rocks in, and you can leave this out in the rain and it doesn't fill up with water, which is really nice. It rinses the rocks off for you. Anyway, there's always little rocks here, so I just kind of clean them out there when I see them, and carry this along with when I go down the row there with my garden fork to clean out the big rocks. This is handy for putting them in and then carrying it to my hedgerow and dumping them as a mulch around my hedgerow plants. Or if there's too many, if they're the right size, I'll keep them for holding down the tarps. So I'll lay those off to the side, all kinds of stuff. So rocks are useful for. Anyway, so that's something to think about if you're tired of having water, you know, having to put away your bucket all the time because it fills up with water when it rains or the sprinklers get in it. Put a bunch of holes in the bottom and then you'll eliminate that issue, and that can be your bucket that stays out for collecting things in that you don't want to get full of water. But anyways, you can see the height here. So this is has compost, used potting mix, and then some pumice. So the white is both a combination. This is perlite here. It's lightweight stuff. The pumice is not quite so lightweight. I don't know if you can find any pumice in here. It's a little heavier. The pumice is heavier, so it doesn't. It's more neutral buoyant, where the perlite will kind of float to the surface when you water the soil and disturb it a little bit. It stays buried for the most part, but you get a little bit more at the top than you'd probably like. This is all perlite here. It's super lightweight stuff. I don't know if there's any hard to find the pumice here. It's all the same color, so he's like, well, which is pumice? And it's a little finer. Most of the big stuff, well, that's not even perlite, that's dirt. But anyway, yeah, it's more about that size or so, the pumice, and smaller. It's like eighth inch minus or something like that. That's what I got. Works really well for agricultural purposes. Anyway, so that's what I'm going to be planting my sweet potato slips in. I've historically done them 3 feet apart, and then some others were saying, oh, you could do down to 18 inches to 2 feet. And I'm like, okay, I'll give it a try. So I'm going to try 2 feet and see how they do. Maybe I'll do one bed 3 feet and the other 2 feet, because they do need a lot of nutrition, and so they may not do well at 2 feet. And so I hedge my bets against by doing one bed 3 and other 2 and see which I get more potatoes off of. So anyway, this is one of the beds, and then I'm going to do another one adjacent to it here that I'm sitting on right now. And so anyway, that's kind of how I'm doing those. So these are my sweet potato slips that I've been growing in a pot, and I'm just dumping out the pot here, trying to extract them here so I can then separate out the different slips with all the roots on them. I'm going to be very careful to keep as many roots intact as possible. Then I'm going to be setting them in a bucket to keep the roots from drying out, and add a little bit more compost on the surface there just to make sure that none of the roots are exposed to the air. So just carefully breaking them apart here. So just digging a good sized hole down here and using the trowel to hold it back, and then grabbing my slip here. This one's got quite a bit of roots, so down a little bit, drop it in the hole there. Sure they're all below by an inch or so. Just cover that back up, and then I'll come back through here. This soil's fairly dry on the surface, a little bit damp down in underneath here. So I'm going to come back with the hose here and give them a good watering in. And you probably even give them some molasses water here at some point, maybe tomorrow. Come back through here, because that'll help to establish the bacterial populations, and then the fungus will come in as well, and the nematodes to get the biology going in around the root zone. So measure off another one over here. Put the next one in over here. So that's pretty much it, how to get them planted out here. I'm just taking they were all in a pot together, so I kind of dumped the pot on the side and try to break apart the different individual slips there, the roots, and get those all separated out and put them in the bucket here. And then, so harvest time will just be, late in the year. I'm going to try and get them a little bit earlier, because voles or somebody was out there chewing on them, and so I'm trying to be checking them end of September or so. Mid-September I'll probably be checking them, and try to get them out little sooner, and not try to just ink out the most amount of size, because I tend to get them eaten. So anyway, nice warm day today. It's up to 81 now, so nice warm day. It's going to be cooling down the next few days, so hopefully that'll help them to get established here, and I'll keep them well watered today. So anyway, that's all I have for you. God bless, and I will see you on the next video. Take care.